What is going on, guys, and welcome to a video that I would say is unexpected, but I don't think that quite sells it. So for those of you that have been following me for a while, or at least over the last year, might be well aware that Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, a horror film that was released last February or March, me and some of the creators of that movie have had a very public feud for well over the last year. I'm not going to get into full detail on exactly what happened because I've talked about it a number of times on this channel. You can go watch my worst movies of 2023 list from last year. I talk about it for about 15 to 20 minutes. I think I even touch on it briefly shortly after I did my review whenever I did my February movies ranked last year. So the information's out there. I'll try to link them down in the video description below. But to summarize it quickly, I saw the film. Did not like it whatsoever. Gave a very negative review for it. Posted my review on Twitter the same night, as well as a few blurbs kind of summarizing my thoughts. And Jagged Edge Productions, who is the production company that created Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, their Twitter account found my tweet. And after a couple of exchanges, things got very heated, and essentially, my thoughts were quote tweeted to all of their followers and to a number of people in the independent horror community. And for about a week, maybe 2 weeks, I got a lot of hate sent my way. I got bashed by a number of people in the independent horror community, filmmakers, directors, writers, actors, as well as just a bunch of people who were fans of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, or even just fans of independent horror that got the wrong impression of what my review was, found it to be mean-spirited. It was framed as being like me being a bully, essentially. So after that, it was a very public issue where anybody on their side was coming at me as if I was a bully, as if I was mean-spirited, or as if I was like a hater. And anybody on my side that was either a follower of mine or even people that didn't really follow me but just saw the exchange and thought that it was unprofessional or it was insecure on their part would come at them. And it went that way for about a year. Not every day, not constant. I mean, it was pretty heavy in February, March, and then it kind of went quiet for a while. But any time that anything online, predominantly on Twitter, was announced or shared in regards to the Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey sequel or the Bambi movie or anything that Jagged Edge Productions was involved with, inevitably I would get tagged about 5 or 6 different times, and the conversation would quickly turn to what happened between me and Jagged Edge Productions. And so for me, it was like a constant reminder because I'm getting tagged constantly. For them, it was like a constant reminder because every time they're trying to move on and do other things, they're being reminded of this exchange that they had with me. Also in November of last year, like months after I figured this was a dead issue, I was kind of a couple people reach out to me and say that there was some live stream on Instagram or somewhere where a couple of the creators of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, my name was brought up and things were said. So right before I did my end of the year list, I was fired up yet again. Like, oh my God, this is still going on. Are you kidding me? And just a couple of weeks ago, a man named Matt Leslie, who some of you guys might be familiar with, he's one of the writers for Summer of '84, which was a horror film that came out in 2018. It was my favorite horror film that year. It might have even been my favorite film that year. I can't quite remember, but loved Summer of '84. I've been a huge champion of it ever since. If you get nothing else out of this video, go check out Summer of '84. But nonetheless, he made a thread on Twitter that was announcing that, one, that he was not a fan of the original Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, but was also the guy who is writing Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. So that certainly got my curiosity. I was like, oh, wow. So you didn't like the first film. You're saying that publicly, but you're also writing the next one. That's interesting for a myriad of reasons, especially since I was a fan of the guy's work. So I was tagged in this post, of course, since it had to do with Winnie the Pooh, and a couple different people tagged me, and I basically just said, like, that's awesome for them to get him. That's definitely a good win. I loved Summer of '84. I wish that I was in a position where I could check the movie out because I'd be eternally more curious to see it now that I know that he's writing it, but unfortunately I just can't support the movie. And that got me and Matt talking very briefly. And he was very familiar with me. He had seen my review on the film. So, things were cool between me and him. Fast forward to just a couple of days ago, about 3 days ago, And a guy that I follow on Twitter named Ted, I won't use his last name because it doesn't matter, but he is also a filmmaker in the horror community. And he had retweeted, Variety or the Hollywood Reporter was reporting on the newest announcement coming out of Jagged Edge Production, that after the slate of 4 or 5 films that they have already announced, the Winnie the Pooh sequel, Bambi, Peter Pan, Pinocchio, all that, they're going to be culminating this first phase, if you will, with a film called Pooniverse, which from the poster is very clearly kind of a riff on Avengers Assemble. It's Winnie the Pooh and Piglet and Pinocchio and Peter Pan and everybody gathering together for a team-up movie. And the internet was collectively losing its shit, in positive and negative over this. And Ted was one of the people that retweeted it, and he had a very frustrated rant attached to it that essentially was just frustrated the fact that major trades have been covering this Winnie the Pooh-niverse stuff so extensively, yet there's so many things going on in independent horror filmmaking that are just getting completely ignored. And that's a very valid reason to be frustrated. To this day, I still think it's a very valid reason to be frustrated. Horror in general seems to always kind of be the redheaded stepchild of the movie industry. I mean, fuck, we're always ignored at the Oscars and everything else, so news coverage that could very much help a film and help a production and help get eyes onto a production. Very valid reason to be frustrated. Nonetheless, Ted, a couple hours later, deleted this tweet and then posted like a retraction apology tweet saying that he was just frustrated and had a bad day and should not be coming down on other filmmakers or their success or whatever. And this prompted me to respond. And I essentially said, these guys dragged me across coals a year ago because I gave their film a negative review. They also brought me up in a live stream and bashed me as recent as a couple of months ago. So they don't really represent what you're talking about here. And you were 100% right to post what you posted. And this prompted, for the first time in over a year, for one of the producers of Winnie the Pooh, Scott Chambers, to reply to me. And essentially, he was denying the existence of the live stream, asking me why I'm continuing to talk about them and their film, why I won't leave them alone, and said I thought we ended this amicably. To which I responded, mostly focusing on my confusion and smart-ass frustration over the term, we ended this amicably, and said, hearing and seeing my name get brought up 7 months later is not ending this amicably. You're delusional. That was basically my response. And I think it was that exchange that prompted either Matt Leslie to talk to them or them talking to him, or maybe conversations were already happening. Nonetheless, I got a message from Matt, the guy who wrote Summer of '84, who is writing Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2, about an hour or so after that little quick tweet exchange between me and Scott. And so the message that he sent me said, "Hey man, wanted to drop you a quick line because I'd like to help squash whatever beef there is between you and the Winnie the Pooh guys. Having spoken privately with them, I know that they really would like to be on good terms with you. Candidly, I think the whole thing makes them pretty upset. Not because you don't like their film, but because they just don't like knowing that there's some kind of tension there. In fact, they also told me they fully respect that you don't like Pooh 1 or the broader universe that they're creating. Having worked closely with them for many months now, I can tell you that they're good, well-meaning guys, and I suspect that there has been a misunderstanding, or at least things got carried away. So I'm reaching out on their behalf to try to get us all in a Zoom to have a chat. They'd like to apologize to you for the part that they played. Any chance you'd be open to that? I always find that actually meeting people humanizes them in a way that these kind of online exchanges can't. Regardless of your answer, I respect it and remain a fan of your work and perspective. Thanks, Matt." And admittedly, I was very taken aback by this. It was not something I expected, and I didn't quite know how to respond at first. I talked a little bit with Matt back and forth about, giving him my perspective and kind of giving him a full picture of why I'm frustrated, because I didn't know how much he had heard from them or how much he was aware of. And I basically just told him I need to sleep on it. I'm open to the idea. I like the idea of resolution. I don't want to walk around knowing that there's a feud going on either. It's exhausting. I get tired of being the guy that's tagged 17 times every single time that a new Pooh thing is announced, and having people cheer on the prospects of me bashing their film for the 10,000th time. So I just said, let me sleep on it. Let me think about it. And I thought about it. I talked with a few close friends about it, kind of got their perspective, and came to the conclusion that there's really not anything to lose. So even if there's a possibility that this goes south, or even if there's a possibility that there's a motivation for this that maybe I'm not considering, what is there to lose? So I emailed Matt, messaged Matt back and said, hey, let's do it. I'm interested in this. And a day later, yesterday afternoon, me, Matt, Scott Chambers, who is the producer of this Winnie the Pooh universe and is also the newly recasted Christopher Robin in Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2, as well as Andrew Scott Bell, who is the composer of the first film as well as the second film, to which his only involvement is he was in the comment section of Haunted Hippie a year ago whenever she did the video kind of talking briefly about the drama and defending me fully in the video. They had an exchange in the comment section that had since been deleted, so I never actually specifically saw what was said, but I had heard secondhand from her that it was not good. So that was the full extent of his involvement. Him and I interacted briefly on Twitter. It was mostly just people tagging me in something, and me and him both like, guys, just stop, just drop it. It's over with. So it was us four on a Zoom call. Reese, the director, was originally supposed to be on it as well, but he was busy at the time. And from what I understand, he's not even on social media. So he might not even have any idea what any of this is about. And that's something important to say as well, which I'll get into a little bit more. So we get on this Zoom call. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know, how, if there's going to be any anger, attitudes, or how things are going to be. And I got to be honest with you. The phone call went significantly better than even my best expectations could have been. All of them seemed like genuinely good dudes. All of them were very friendly. The two that I had the bad interactions with were extremely apologetic, were extremely forthright. There was no back and forth, sharing the blame or anything like that. They were just genuinely apologetic from the get-go. And that was a pleasant surprise for me. So we talked about everything. I basically opened up the conversation. Matt was the mediator, so he introduced everybody and kind of went over about how basically the same thing that he messaged me, that he thinks that there was a lot of misunderstanding and wants to make sure everybody gets together. And he was the mediator of the conversation. But I opened up conversation with asking, first of all, I was like, okay, well, first of all, which of you guys was the one that runs the Jagged Edge Productions and the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey Twitter account that I was having these negative interactions with a year ago? And right away, Scott said, it's me. It was all me. So it's not entirely inaccurate to say that the majority of this feud has really just been me and Scott, which is the important detail and why it's important to have these conversations sometimes, because for as long as I've been talking about this situation, I've only said the people who made Blood and Honey, because I don't know specifically who the hell it was. I don't know how many people were involved. I don't know how many people share the opinions of the person that I was having frustrating conversations with. And there might have been a lot of people that got some blame and some hate, or got kind of pulled into this feud that had nothing to do with it when it was really just me and Scott. So nonetheless, Scott said it was all me. I was the one that run the account. I was the one that responded. I was the one that quote tweeted. It was all me. And he explained that, at the time of the release of Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, there was a gargantuan amount of negativity surrounding the film that was getting directed at primarily the director, Reese, who, again, I never had any interaction with. And there was a multitude of death threats and, suggestions of suicide and things like that. And so essentially what Scott said was that things were just so unbearably negative and things were so toxic and there was so much hate and vitriol getting thrown at primarily Reese that when he came across my tweet, that was just kind of the tipping point. Everything had been internalized, and then all of a sudden I have this tweet that, the tweet that set them off was me essentially calling the film effortless. And I think when they read that, they took it as nobody worked hard on this film and everybody's lazy that is involved with this film. And that wasn't really my intention with that statement. And I further clarified that, which I'll get into. But that statement, that tweet, sent him over the edge. He responded to it. I basically got all of the frustration, all of the unload from everything that they had already been enduring that I didn't cause, but just had been building up. And I think there was also a bit of maybe some naivety on how social media works. So he also said he didn't intend for it to be like this viral thing. It was supposed to be a direct statement to me, very similar to the movie Chef. Have you seen that? It was like, I thought I was sending him a direct message. But he was responding to me, and then all of a sudden it just took off. And social media and the internet does what social media and the internet does. And so it became a much bigger thing with so many more people involved with it and so many more people chiming in on it and sharing it and quote tweeting it than was ever intended. And I believed him 100%. You know, as somebody that has lived and worked in this social media world for over 7 years now, I am no stranger to how that can happen. I am no stranger to having a moment of frustration where you unload maybe a little bit harder than you should have, responding to something that maybe wasn't the healthiest thing to respond to, quote tweeting something to try to make a point, and then it kind of takes off from there, and all of a sudden it's this dog pile situation that you didn't necessarily intend. It happens very easily. And so I took him at his word. I 100% believed him, and I forgive him for that. So, he owned up to it 100%. And then I asked about the live stream. I said, look, I've had a couple different people come to me back in November talking about this live stream. I don't even think these couple of people interact. So it's not like they kind of like got together and planned this thing. And I said, I know just yesterday you were denying the existence of it. Hopefully you understand why it's hard for me to believe. And he said, yeah, 100%. Totally understand. So I just asked, like, what happened? Was it a live stream? Was it a post? Like, I know details can get skewed. You know, people online sometimes like to exaggerate to stir shit up. Like, is there something you can remember that is probably what they're talking about? And essentially what he said was there was a live Q&A that they were doing, of which they've done many, that he doesn't specifically remember what was asked or what he said in response to it, but Andrew, the composer, kind of corroborated and said, yeah, I mean, there was something that was brought up about one of your rankings. And then Scott's response was essentially saying, like, I don't want to talk about Cody. I don't even want to acknowledge that he's kind of a bully. And that might have been the extent of it. Maybe they went a little further with that. I don't know where the truth lies, honestly. Like I said, sometimes people online like to exaggerate. Sometimes you can get skewed details. Maybe that was exactly what happened. Maybe there was more to it. Regardless, there was something said that they acknowledged, and it's whatever. The live stream isn't available to watch. You know, when you're on Instagram, the shit deletes as soon as you're off, so it's fine. You know, there's nothing that's really worth discussing, but I just wanted to kind of have an idea of what I was being told about so that I know the most facts. And then I essentially just told them, like, look, my review was never meant to be personal. None of my reviews are meant to be personal. For as negative as my Winnie the Pooh review was, it was never meant to be an attack on them as people, on them as creatives, on their potential in the future. I wasn't like calling them a bunch of talentless assholes who should never work again. Like, it was never that type of situation. Everything that I said that was critical or negative was directed at the film. And even my tweets, and I even went back to the one that specifically kind of set everybody off, which the effortless line, like that's all talking about the film. Obviously, people worked hard on this, whether it was a 7-day shoot or a 25-day shoot, doesn't matter. Like, if you understand the filmmaking process at all, it's impossible to say with a straight face that nobody worked hard on even the worst movie on earth. You go find the worst movie you've ever seen in your life. Somebody busted their ass to make that thing. It's a fact. Doesn't excuse the final product, but it's a fact. So I just kind of wanted to convey that there's no negative intentions with what I do. And I said, I know there's some people online that's not the case. I know some people out there that do what I do absolutely intend it to be personal, and they attack the filmmakers, and it's all about bringing them down and insulting them as people. And sometimes it's hard for people that don't consistently watch reviews or aren't familiar with people's work, and it's hard to decipher who is who in this space. Are they the negative asshole toxic person, or are they just somebody who legitimately is trying to do a good job and is trying to critique movies and give their honest experience, and it just happened to be very negative? So I acknowledged all of that, and it was just like, it's genuinely, it was never meant to be taken anywhere, and I'm sorry if it was. But in the future, that's how most people who are doing it right are. They're not intending for their negative review on your work to be anything personal. And I think that's important for them to hold on to, because inevitably they're going to get a lot of negative attention with the direction that they've taken. Even if Blood and Honey 2 is a significantly better movie than the first one, there's always going to be some negativity there because people don't like the concept or people don't like the first film, so they're not willing to forgive that for the second film. And, it's just going to happen. And there's even people out there, I mean, fuck, Christopher Nolan, people like Denis Villeneuve, people that are like the Hollywood elite's greatest filmmakers of all time. Even they get negativity. And I talked briefly about, especially when they brought up the death threats and stuff, just kind of connected with them on a moment about how I know what that's like. I mean, I live on social media, so I'm no stranger to negative comments. I'm no stranger to getting death threats and craziness. I talked briefly about my little stint back in Halloween 2018, which to this day is like the worst little segment of negativity that I've experienced, where people were telling me the same things that they were telling him, that I should kill myself and that I should die and I should have never been born. And my 1.5-year-old daughter at the time should have been aborted, and all these things that, to be honest with you, I mean, 2018 was a long time ago. Some of those comments still stick with me a little bit. I'm very thick-skinned, and like I told them, it's very easy for me to ignore most negative comments because I just understand that the person on the other side of that is clearly a miserable person that just wants to make me feel worse to make them feel better, and I don't give them that satisfaction. Although sometimes it's a part of my process to shit on that person's head. So for every 200 or so that I'm able to ignore, there's one where I'm like, okay, you're the one, and I have to respond. But I, just kind of sympathize with them and kind of gave some stories of me about how, like, I know how that is, and it sucks. It shouldn't be that way, but that's the way that the internet and social media is, and things just get wild. And so, we just had shared experiences and talked about that briefly, and much to my surprise, then they really started to praise me quite a bit and give me a lot of credit for what I had built on YouTube. Scott was talking about how cool it is that I've built a following the size that I have, and that they admire that. And Andrew was funny enough, said that he actually watches my channel. He watched it before and even after the controversy, which was surprising to hear. And he was kind of giving me some praise there too. So that was very cool of them. They didn't have to do that at all. I wouldn't have blinked an eye if we just talked about the subject at hand and didn't comment on each other's work, and that was it. But they took it a step further. As I said, they just seem like genuinely good dudes, genuinely well-meaning guys that just things got out of hand. They had a bunch of negativity going on, and I was just the unfortunate person that got both barrels unloaded on them. And unfortunately for them, I'm me. So it wasn't just some random dude on Twitter that they could, shit on and then walk away. I was somebody that was not going to keep quiet, and my following was not going to keep quiet, and it became much more public than it was ever intended to be. And then just social media continuing to snowball all of that to where it continued on 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 months later. And, we all agreed that we should have gotten on this phone call a lot sooner. This is a phone call that probably should have happened back in last March and could have squashed it all then, and could have been a lot happier and a lot more stress-free than we were whenever this situation was brought up. So just a really good conversation. And it's also important to add that since having this conversation, we have all talked quite a bit over Twitter over the last day and a half. Andrew actually sent me a message only because he couldn't send it directly to her. He sent me a message to convey over to Haunted Hippie to apologize for their interaction, and I've since given that to her, and they're probably talking as we speak. So again, full accountability, full apology on their behalf. They even posted something publicly, which was my recommendation, because unfortunately I'm no stranger to public feuds. And I said, look, like it's important that we do this privately. It's not really anybody's business what we talk about. But now that we're all good, I do think it's important that we say something publicly. That way, if it does continue, if we do have people that continue to try to rile this up, there's something we can point at and say, look, guys, we're good. This was weeks ago. This was months ago. Like, we're all good. You can have your own opinions about me or the filmmakers or their films, but as far as we go, everything's good. So that's all public now. So just to read the statements that we all put on Twitter. So on my account, I put, "Life loves to throw curveballs. I sat down with a few of the gentlemen who brought us Blood and Honey and had a genuine heart-to-heart about all the drama and animosity that came from our unfortunate interaction last year. We sorted it all out and walked away on really good terms. I'll likely do a video soon detailing our conversation to make sure the issue is as publicly squashed as possible. My thoughts on their film aside, they seem like genuinely good dudes who took my review more personally than I ever intended, and emotions on both sides took over. Having a life and career on social media can lead to a lot of craziness and unneeded drama. Hopefully all of us shaking hands will, if nothing else, show that we're all still human behind these videos and tweets." Matt Leslie, the writer, wrote, "Love when good, talented people come together, find an understanding, and leave with newfound respect for one another. The internet has a way of dehumanizing us, but we're all still just trying to find our way in life," and then thanked all the three of us. The official Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2 account wrote, "Just had an absolute bro fest on Zoom with Cody Leach, and I have to admit, he's very handsome, like me. We're so glad we had a chance to meet and talk with Cody and work through everything that's been building for over a year now. Cody is a talented, driven person, and we respect how hard he's worked to build his incredible audience. It felt great to sit face to face, apologize, and put this all behind us. I think we even spent more on tangents and other topics than we spent talking about tweets and reviews, because that's what happens when people step away from a keyboard and talk. There's more that connects us than divides us, and that was on full display today. Social media can be such a mindfuck. It's important to remember we're all human, or half human and half bear. Thank you for the kind and joyful conversation, Cody. We appreciate your willingness to meet." Okay, that's enough sentimental fluff from this silly old bear. Back to slashing. And then finally, the Jagged Edge Productions account, which is Scott Chambers, said, "Online chatter often turns into misinterpreted feelings and ideas. Last year, we had one such misunderstanding with Cody Leach. Thankfully, he was big enough to have a chat with us this morning, and we've squashed the whole thing." And the reason why I thought it was important to do this video and to talk more in detail about this conversation and what we talked about and you know, everything getting squashed is not only so everybody that follows me here that doesn't necessarily follow me on Twitter knows that that is over with and there's no longer any turmoil. And if you are, in fact, interested in Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2 or anything else these guys are working on, but you felt conflicted or you know, felt like guilty about not wanting to see it be out of support for me, we're good now. So you don't have to worry about that. That baggage has been lifted. But even more so than that, as somebody who has spent a lot of time on social media and has seen some of the darkest sides of it and has been through public feuds before that to a certain extent still go unresolved to this day, certainly publicly, I think it's really important to show that something like this can happen, that you can have two parties that were absolutely at each other's throats fully publicly, and it was this gigantic deal where it seemed like nobody was ever going to get along and this was just going to be a permanent thing forever for as long as it gets brought up. To show that that can be resolved if you just talk to each other. You know, it's so easy on social media and on the internet to forget that the people making videos like mine or the people dropping tweets or behind Instagram accounts or what say you are still human beings on the other side of that at the end of the day. There are people that have their own feelings, their own emotions, their own faults, and we all make mistakes. Sometimes we can put things out into the world we don't fully intend. Sometimes we can let a moment of emotion say things that we don't fully get behind, or we can go a little bit harder than we intended to, or things can get twisted. I mean, there's a million different things that can go wrong on social media that don't necessarily reflect what the person behind it actually feels and thinks. And so I think it's important. I think it's awesome that I have this as the next chapter of this story. That me and these guys that had such a public issue with each other and had no qualms whatsoever with saying the worst things about each other because of how we perceived each other, that actually getting face to face and talking and connecting as humans and talking about music and guitars and you know, things in our childhood and stuff, which we did talk about. We spent more time on tangents than we did talking about the actual subject at hand. That you can quickly realize, holy shit, we're all just human. Like, these guys might be my friends. if this wasn't the way that we interacted for the first time, and maybe they'll be friends later on, maybe. And so it's awesome to have an example like this that I'm happy to share with everybody to show how things should be. Way too often nowadays, it just seems like social media has removed us from each other, to where we're all connected more than we have ever been in our lives with the existence of the internet and social media, and yet simultaneously we are the most separated from each other than we have ever been in the history of ever, because we're all behind keyboards, and there's just this emotion, there's this human element that's completely removed from it that we so easily lose sight of. I lose sight of it more times than not. And so it's awesome to be able to have something like this to share with everybody, that when you have an issue with somebody that's over the internet or over social media, if at all possible, if you could just have a human-to-human conversation with them, you'll probably realize you have more in common with them than you would want to admit. And this goes with everything. This goes with politics and everything. You could have the most hardcore liberal and the most hardcore conservative that when they're talking to each other on a Facebook post could seem like they should be mortal enemies. You get those two people in a room and just have them talk, more times than not, I guarantee they're going to find a lot of things about themselves that are very similar. And that's what we're missing nowadays. That's something that I feel like we have to try to reclaim as much as possible. So I don't want to go on a soapbox too long, and I want to turn this into an Oprah episode, but it's just awesome that this is able to happen. It's awesome that I'm able to put a feud behind me. They're able to put a feud behind them. We can acknowledge it publicly. Yesterday, 99.9% of the response that we saw on Twitter with us, digitally shaking hands, if you will, was positive and was actually kind of excited and was moved by all of that. And hopefully it's the same thing with the YouTube video that I'm posting here. It's just an awesome thing. So if you walk away with anything, it's watch Summer of '84. Everything's good between me and the Blood and Honey people. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like this, whether it be smaller or larger, if there is an opportunity to just talk, to just get face to face, whether it's on a screen or actually face to face, and just connect as human beings, I guarantee you'll be surprised with the results. So what does this mean for the future? Because I'm sure some people are going to be asking this. Am I going to review Blood and Honey 2 or anything else that comes out? Honestly, I'm still undecided. I've said for over a year now that I was not going to, but it was only because of the feud. It was only because of the drama going on, and because I just didn't feel like there was going to be any value in me coming back again and talking about these guys' work. And especially if it's going to be negative again, it's just going to feel like I'm fanning the flames. And so I was just going to remove myself from it and take the 0. Now that everything's good between us, do I plan on reviewing the film? As I said, I'm undecided. I've never reviewed a film that has so much personal stuff attached to it, positive and negative. And so I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that properly. I don't ever want to give the impression that I'm a hypocrite or that I have any kind of lack of integrity on my part. That integrity piece is extremely important to me. I think I've worked very hard to maintain that integrity, and I don't want to do anything that might cloud that for some people. And I think that there are some people that would see me reviewing their second film, and especially if it's a scenario where it's significantly better than the first film and my review is much more positive than it was the first film, I don't want anybody to get the impression that that is a reflection of this conversation and not just the film. And I can promise you now, if I do decide to review this film in a week, whether I like it, love it, or hate it, you're only going to hear my opinion on the film, and that's not going to be clouded by any of the past drama or this new resolution. If you doubt that, if you're questioning my integrity, if I decide to do that, in my opinion, you never thought very much of my integrity in the first place, and if it wasn't this, it'd be something else that you would choose to use as a reflection of who I am in a negative light. So I don't ever want to let the potential of those people dictate my decision making, because I think people that know me and people that trust me and people that have confidence in my integrity would never think that way. And those are the people that I'm here for. So I don't know. I might review it. I might choose to not review it because I just feel like there's too much attached to it. And you'll find out, I guess, whether you see a video next Wednesday or not. But all I can say is that this was a really great conversation. These guys seem to be really cool guys. Whether or not I liked their film or not, which I obviously did not, whether or not I have a lot of interest or faith in the projects that they have decided to tie themselves to for the next few years, which my prospects aren't very high until what I see changes my mind. They seem like really cool guys, and I enjoyed meeting them. I enjoyed talking with them, and I'm very happy that we were able to put this behind us. So hopefully you guys got something out of this, and I look forward to moving on and seeing where things go in the future now that I don't have this feud hanging in the balance. So thank you guys for listening to what's probably a much longer video than I intended, as per usual. But yeah, we'll talk again very soon.